Welcome to Iron and Ceremony, Librarius Omnis, where we explore the depths of the Black Library.
Hi everyone, John here. This is part 2 of 3 of our Flight of the Eisenstein episodes. As I mentioned at the start of the last video, we've decided to split the videos into parts, similar to how they're divided in the books. If you haven't already, make sure you go back, check out part 1, and then part 3 will be on its way very shortly. We hope you're enjoying so far. See you soon.
But that brings us swiftly into part 2, a Sundered Vow. And we go straight into Tarvitz saying it's treachery, we've been betrayed. And we've already had the conversation in Galaxy in Flames. Mm-hmm. So here Garrow goes into he kicks the Vox officer out and goes into here, and they're talking, and Garrow I've jumped ahead there. What happens is Garrow takes command of the controls for the guns.
Yeah.
And all we see is he pushes the trigger and an explosion happens. But none of the men on board, none of the crew see what has
transpired.
And we have Sendek and Decius are arguing, because Sendek's saying, of course, Garrow saved Tarvitz, but Decius is saying, no, Garrow would have killed Tarvitz as ordered, because that is what he was ordered to do.
Yeah.
So although they're loyal to Garrow, now we have the cracks of, well, why would Garrow do something against the War Master or Illidan's orders? Because now that's going to make us a target. We'll get reprimanded.
Well, less than that, we're the traitors, right? If we haven't followed orders, the War Master's orders, which, as far as they're concerned at the moment, is still
law.
Yeah, it's still the Emperor's word.
Yeah.
So by not following the War Master's orders, you are not following the Emperor's word. Yeah. And so Decius is, because Decius is obviously from Barbarous as well. So he is very much, he's young, he's hot-headed. Garrow wants to teach him.
Yeah.
Right? Wants to take him under his wing and sort of calm his hot-headedness. But he's, as I said, he's like, no, it will go this way. That's it. We'll get what we've done. And as I said, when you jumped ahead, like, obviously Garrow is in the Vox unit, and like people are trying to work out what's happened.
Yeah.
And it's a real pivotal moment, because by siding with Tarvitz, he effectively, like half of his men see it as them being doomed.
Yeah.
And the other half don't. And then the other side of it is obviously they've got the second company, or at least a squad of the second company, and Ignatius Grulgor on the ship as well.
Yeah. And that's because that is it. He fires the guns, he goes into the Vox, and they're arguing. Decius, like you say, Decius is young, and an order is an order. We're Astartes. We do what we're told.
Yeah.
But obviously Garrow's got that life experience, because he's however many hundreds of years old, and he's looking at it from a wider picture, and he's seen a couple of things, not too much really, but a couple of things that he knows aren't adding up. And for his trusted brother of however many battles to say this is treachery, like he's going to take those words seriously. And he comes out and they say as much, and Decius's argument like you say, he says, well, now you've turned us traitor. We didn't choose this. You've just gone on your own. But before it can go too far, Caleb bursts in and tells them what's going on, which sort of cements Garrow's decision.
Yeah.
And he says that Grulgar's got the life eater. So Garrow, Sendek, and Caleb leave, and they run down and catch up with Voyan. And Voyan's still obviously a Lodge brother, and he says, I'll speak to Grulgar as a Lodge member, and we'll find out what's going on. And Garrow tells him it's pointless, and obviously because of what's just happened with Tarvitz, and Garrow calls out Grulgar and demands he explains himself in the name of the Emperor. And Grulgar here then turns around, and he's probably the first person really who turns around and fully denounces the Emperor, confirms that confirms what they're doing, and the Emperor's not here, he's abandoned us, so we're going to side with Horus, and we're going to take over.
This is it. We're with our Primarch Mortarion.
Yeah.
And again, it's interesting because it's more, they do follow Horus, but it's more, we're going to follow our Primarch, who is following Horus.
Exactly.
You know, Mortarion and Horus have their differences still, and so you don't know. You know, that's the thing with the traitor Primarchs. They're all in it for themselves in one way or another. And so although they're following Horus, it's more, you know, it's a means to an end.
Exactly.
But like Grulgar is following Mortarion, and it's like, right, you know, this is the way to go. This is how we're gonna do this. And obviously, at this point, we know it's the Life Eater virus. We know bad news is about to happen. We know there's not much that can go on. I'm pretty sure Libertas gets a showing again.
Well, yeah. So it's literally a case of Garrow's so angry because in front of him he's putting it all together. He's just had to save Tarvitz, so clearly it's already happening. They've got the evidence on his ship of Life Eater, and Grulgar saying we're doing this. So he pulls his sword out and then hesitates, because if he does this, he's killing an Astartes, because the ships he blew up were just normal people that clearly Astartes don't care too much about.
Mm-hmm.
But killing another Astartes is crossing the line, and he hesitates and gives Grulgar the chance to pull out his pistol, his bolt pistol. But obviously Grulgar is not completely stupid, because he's quite clear and says, be careful what you're shooting at, because if we don't want to set the virus off inside. So outnumbered, Garrow and the others, luckily it's a hand-to-hand fight.
Mm-hmm.
And even here, Garrow thinks, I wish that Decius was here, because he's brilliant. He's the hand-to-hand guy. We could have done with him down here. And they start fighting, and Garrow he kills another Astartes trying to get to Grulgar, and even in that moment, like, even though he's fighting, it sort of slows down internally, and he feels the pain of just killing a brother. Somebody that he's obviously not in his from his chapter, but somebody else he's just had to kill, that obviously he's probably fought battles with.
They've waged war together, you know, they've been on the same battlefields, they've seen the same planets, they fought the same enemies, and you know, in their romanticized version of it, there should never be brother or Astartes on Astartes war. It's up until this point, it just doesn't happen. Yeah, exactly.
So on the other side of the deck, Caleb's been attacked by the crew members, like the non-Astartes.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out, obviously, he did try and become an Astarte, so he's obviously, even though he's just a housecarl, he's still quite tough and manages to fight them off.
Yeah.
And he finds his pistol, and he sees, just as Grulgar's about to probably put a headshot on Garrow, and then he gets off a round which hits home, sending Grulgar's pistol out of line. Grulgar fires and shoots straight into a barrel of Life Eater.
Yep.
But his reactions are so quick. He gets hit, and within a second, he's thrown a knife straight into Caleb's chest and ruins his day.
Caleb's not in good shape anymore.
No. And so they've got the so Life Eater's coming out, Caleb's down, and as before Caleb actually shot, he sent a prayer out to the Emperor as well, which again just shows that Caleb has been praying, and he's taken on religion.
He's got the Aquila, hasn't he? The little Aquila thing that all of the those that follow the Lictitio Divinatus.
Yeah,
got it. Those guys that follow that, you know, the God Emperor. he's got the same symbol.
Yeah, and Caleb, obviously his faith comes out again, because even though he's got a big knife in his chest, he manages to shout over the sound of fighting. He says to Gary, "You are of purpose," and he hits the door button, which starts coming down, and Garrow, Voyan, and Cendric are able to get out. As the door's coming down, one of the enemy Death Guard does a Indiana Jones dive, but doesn't make it, and gets chopped in half by the door. And then they just hear, obviously, the banging on the door and screaming. Yeah. Obviously, that slows down, and then they realise, okay, what's happened? And Garrow has the deck decompressed and opened up into space to get the virus out.
Flush it all into the void.
Yeah. So they run back to we jump forward a bit to Garrow assembling his men, and they're up in like a sort of separate lookout post on the ship.
Yeah.
And he's got the Voyan, Cendric, Decius, Haker and his squad, and then he turns up with the ship's captain and second command, and gets them in and tells them what's basically lays it on the line and says, "This is what's happened.
Yeah,
we've got a mission to do now. We've been betrayed. We've got to get a warning out. We've got to clear this ship of Grulgar's men before they find out the surviving Grulgar's men before they find out what's happened."
Yeah,
and then he produces Oath of Moment papers, which are already pre-written. And obviously, this is another thing. All the Oath of Moments are written for the specific battles that they're going to go on to, or their specific mission.
Yeah,
he's taken the time to write out probably 20 or 30 in freehand, and then dish them out. Even though they got a bit of a time crunch going on, he's found the time to get these written out. It dishes it out and says, right, it gets them all to swear.
Yeah,
and they swear to the mission, and they know what they're going to do. And Decius says, well, that was a fine oath, but who was here to hear it? And Garrow points out to the stars and says, the Emperor heard.
Yeah.
Which is another, he's not quite there yet, but he's definitely
Garrow's not there, because he is still an Astartes, but he is like, he's like, this is for the Emperor, like, who is above all else. So, like, as I said, you see the signs of like, Decius as being a little bit, again, a few of the men aren't sure. So like you got Voyan, who's seen the whole lodge thing collapse around him, and he's not happy about that. Decius is obviously, he's had a decision made for him, and he's Death Guard. He's not Dusk Raider. He's Death Guard, and he's like, this has all been taken away from me, and I haven't had a choice in it.
Yeah.
And you keep making these choices for me and making me do these things that I don't have any other option, so I'm going to do it, but I'm not happy about it.
Exactly.
And so they're doing this, and while they're sort of clearing the ship and getting on with stuff like this and agreeing that, right, we're going to take this message to Terra, we're going to take the Eisenstein through the warp and get there as soon as we can, all good stuff, makes sense. And then there's another Thunderhawk.
Yes.
And they're like, what's this? Another one?
Yeah. So we do have they're back down into the bay, waiting for this Thunderhawk to come. But before we get to that, obviously, the reason I think they let this Thunderhawk come on is, while they're all clearing out the ship, Garrow goes back to his quarters to sort of comprehend what he's just done, and he's going through Caleb's stuff and finds his holy papers, and then he's trying to figure out what Caleb meant, because he says, you are of purpose, and he's completely drained, and he falls down to his knees, and he makes the sign of the Aquila, and he's like, what do I do? And then he just hears the voice saying, save us, Nathaniel.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's another as he's on his knees and he's at despair, he just hears it. Obviously, she's not there yet, and he doesn't know what it is, but he just hears another "Save us, Nathaniel," which pushes him again. I think he's just seen the holy papers. He's grieving, and then again, "Save us." So it's sort of, although he doesn't really understand what's going on, I think again it's pushing him into this direction. But yeah, and then the Thunderhawk turns up, and who marches off of it are a Lunar Wolf, who we've come to know and love as Cruz.
Axon Cruz, and it's very, very interesting that he calls himself a Lunar Wolf at this point.
Yeah, and obviously he that just helps Garrow, because Cruz gives his bolter over and says, "Do what you want with this," and Garrow says, "This will be cleaned and given straight back to you because you're here for the right reason." And then he introduces Cinderman, and he recognizes him as the old man scurrying along from the Vengeful Spirit.
That's it.
And then he's obviously introduced to Mercedes, the documentarist.
Yep.
And then last but not least is Miss Keeler, who obviously takes his breath away again. Yep. And he realizes this is who I've been hearing and seeing in my visions and dreams. And they say, right, okay, well, here's the plan. We're going to break orbit. We're going to dive into the warp and get out of here. And Cruz says, well, the only way to do that, we're going to have to pass Typhon's ship, the Terminus Est, and to get past that. But as this is going on, we go back to the surface of Istavan for the last time, for now. And we get to link up with Tamita of the Death Guard, who are below the Titan, and they realise it's cease-fired, and they're like, what the hell are they doing? And the Comms Marine says he's just heard the Emperor's children come by, Tarvitz, who's mentioned a World Eater virus, and he's thinking, well, I don't remember the briefing. They're saying that the Istavans had this capability.
Yeah.
And as they're looking up at luckily he's looking up at this Titan, wondering what the hell is going on, and he just sees up above the bombs going off, and has time to tell his men, it's time to everyone fall back, get into the bunkers, get yourselves in.
Yeah.
And he is alongside their veteran dreadnought, Huron Vow, who is obviously another I've said it, another dreadnought, and they're getting the men, as many men inside as they can, and Huron says to him, you need to get inside now.
Yeah.
I'll stay out here and I'll watch over the men, don't worry about it, I'll be okay. And Tamita has obviously hesitated too long because he wanted to make sure his men were safe, and then he starts feeling the effects of this bomb. It gets the door shut, and obviously he falls down as his insides are melting around him.
Yeah.
And he just notices Huron's got a crack in his armor.
Yeah.
And
the carapace. Yeah.
And Huron says, well, look, you didn't need to know. You could have gone in and been all right. And then he sort of picks him up, cradles him, and walks away, and says to Horus, I don't even know if they know it's Horus at this point.
No.
But they say, you don't get this victory. We decide how we're going to die. And then he self-destructs and takes himself out and takes out Tamita. Rather than, even though Tamita's probably suffered pretty horrifically by now, just stops them having to die at the hands of the virus.
Yeah, not killed by their own. Killed the way that they get to decide. They did it themselves.
Exactly. Even though it was pretty much a done deal, just that take for themselves. I think dying a better death than what they were given.
Dark times on this fan free.
Yeah, sucks. Not a holiday destination of choice.
No, definitely not. Although, before that happened, it sounded lovely. Like the coral city,
it did, yeah.
Like, that sounds nice, but no, not a place to be.
And probably at risk of going into a tangent, So obviously we know the whole plan was to go to Istvan free and kill Prowl and the corrupted. Were they corrupted, or was this just Horus saying, "Well, we're going to go to this planet. They're corrupted, and they've just killed a bunch of innocents for the sake of it"?
I think I think they're like, I think because of the war singer and stuff like that, there is corrupt. There, if it was a battle, bringing a world into compliance, they probably would have done the same thing. But they used it as an excuse to put the it's literally the first planet or the first system they could come to that they could go, right.
Yeah.
We'll get rid of all of the loyalists on that planet, and then we know we're going to get a reprisal force, and we'll do that on Istvan. I can't remember what the other one is. Istvan 5, where you have the drop site massacre. It's Istvan 4 or Istvan 5, but that's where Fulgrim goes off to set up the
next trap.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so War Singers they're Chaos exclusive. Then you wouldn't get a War Singer on. No,
it's Chaos or Xenos. So it's because that's the bit Eilidon. In this one, you find out that it's it's a Xenos voice box or whatever it is that Eilidons had fitted, which is the same as the War Singer. So it's like a corrupted.
Okay.
It's a corrupted corruption of humanity,
Sure.
and so as far as the Emperor's concerned, it's a white
no-go.
God.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, how long do you think Erebus was on that planet for before this all happened? Because he was on the moon of Davin for a while, wasn't he? Definitely.
Erebus is it's interesting because I've started, as I said, I've started the Last Heretic now.
Yeah.
And Erebus is a sneaky git. And but it is interesting reading a bit more about him, and the thing is the word bearers are they are followers, or it becomes more clear, but they're followers of Chaos Undivided, right? So they are I suppose the way that they see it from Colchis, where they're obviously from, they're followers of the old gods or the ancient gods, and they didn't follow just one. There were multiple different deities that could be followed and worshipped, which it turns out are the ruinous powers. They are the gods of chaos. So they are very much Chaos Undivided, but they go on. Erebus has been on missions around worlds that they've already made compliant.
Yeah.
Where they've seen previous cultures that have worshipped similar gods to what they did on Colchis, and whether that's a singular god or multiple gods, and recognize that these are the same kind of deities. And so he has probably been snaking his way around and going, right, well, on this planet I know they've got an affinity for this type of god, so I'm gonna gonna rekindle the following of that particular religion, or religion as they call it at the time, and then that's what's caused the corruption.
Fair enough.
That, as I said, very tangent heavy. Trying to go into it a bit lightly. I haven't read all the Heretic yet, the first Heretic, but I'm sure that will reveal a bit more for me.
Yeah.
But it's as I said, Erebus, he's a sneaky git, and I have no doubt that his hand is in a lot of this, right?
He was definitely there's definitely a Erebus was here sticker under a desk somewhere on this planet.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Right, so off the tangent, we jump onto Typhon's ship, where he's watching events unfold, and it says here that he's been waiting for this for a long time. Like, he's been shown these books by Erebus already, and he had this knowledge before Horus or Mortarion, and he's got this inner venom building up because he's known about this, and then his Primarch is basically new to it, and he's got to wait for him to play catch up before he can take the power. He knows that he wants this to happen, but he wants to break free of Mortarion, and he wants to be the herald for chaos.
It's the first seeds of that kind of this clash or this schism between Mortarion and Typhon, as he's known at the moment. And it's like, you know, Typhon, as you said, he's well aware of it. He wants this power, and he wants it, and he's a bit tired of the Primarch. Like, you know, he's like, I don't care what he thinks, I don't care what he's up to, it doesn't bother me. He's probably leading us in the wrong direction. He can't make his mind up. He's new to this. He doesn't, you know, maybe he does want to embrace it, maybe he doesn't. I don't care. I do want to do it. Get out the way and let me embrace it.
And he's probably been, obviously he's had Erebus there, and he's been key probably to get Mortarion where he is, because he's been using Grulgar's hatred of Garrow, and then he's introduced him into the lodges and got Grulgar spreading the hatred towards like the old ways and doing Typhon's job for him. And Typhon's just been quite clever and stood to the side. And then while he's sitting here stewing and getting quite annoyed, he realizes he hasn't actually heard from Grulgar.
What's going on there?
Yeah. And as he's wondering what's going on, they get a transmission from Mass, the Vox officer from the Eisenstein, who is, again, he's been sat there listening to everything that Garrow's been saying and doing. And a minute ago, he was just a normal officer on the ship doing their job, and then they've got this Astartes come on board, killed half of the crew, blown up some ships loyal to the War Master, and now are planning to do a runner with some stowaways. And he again all comes back to power, because he's been having visions of grandeur where one day he's going to be a shipmaster. But if he goes along with this plan, then like his career's over.
He's not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, similar to what we see on board the Desiree, doing the right thing and then getting a promotion don't really come together. It's all about the power play. Doesn't matter who has to die or what's going on. They don't really care. So he gets the message to Typhon and tells them what Garrow's doing. So Typhon turns to his ship's crew and says, let's run an intercept course with the Eisenstein. And at the same time, Garrow finds out Typhon's moving to intercept and discover that what Mass has done. And Mass screams at him and calls him a traitor. So Garrow does him a favour and breaks his neck.
Yeah, he doesn't muck around, does he?
No.
It's like, we'll just snap his neck. That would be the easiest way to deal with this.
Yeah.
Like, and again, you kind of see maybe the brutality at hand with, the brutality at hand with the Astartes, with the Space Marines, that they can be a little bit, they can be a little bit nasty when they need to be. And there's no question. Like, he's just like, we don't have any time for this anymore. No. Like, we've sworn an oath. We've got to get to Terra. You know, you've got Terminus S chasing off or turning round to swing at us now, and we're trying to get out of here.
Yeah, and I've heard your opinion, and it's not valued. Goodbye.
Yeah.
So they're doing the runner, and I think their plan is to use the moon to slingshot away, and then they'll away from the Terminus S into the warp.
Yeah.
And then Typhon gets a call from Maglehurst, who's saying, "Oh, I've noticed that you've come out of formation. What's going on?" And it says, "Well, we've got Garrow has turned traitor, and they're trying to escape." And then he basically gets a talking down to from Maglehurst on behalf of Horus, saying, "You better sort this out."
Yeah.
And then he gets the news from one of his shipmaster saying, "Oh, we're stuck in the moon's gravity. We're never going to catch them. We don't have our guns are fixed. There's nothing we can do."
Yeah.
So as a reward, he punches this guy clean in the face and and wrecks him.
Oh dear.
And then back on the Eisenstein, they're having a bit of an argument about what they're going to do, and Voyen and Decius obviously are the voices against jumping into the warp blindly.
Yeah.
But Keeler turns and says, "The time is to go now."
Yeah. There's no
now
time.
or never.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Garrow obviously takes that as law, and they jump.
That's it. Yeah. They do take a bit of damage from Typhon, though, don't they?
Yeah, they were hit a couple of times before they managed to get into the moon's orbit. They got a couple of shots, but obviously they put the power into the shields. So although they didn't get blown up, they didn't get away unscathed either. Which jumping into the warp, obviously the big talk so far was how dangerous it is, because they all know that from the astropaths, the warp storms are out of control.
That's it. The warp is not a friendly place right now.
Yeah.
And that becomes a bit important as time goes on, because
Exactly.
there's a bit more context that comes in as we get closer to it. But they do jump. Yeah.
It's described as basically a ship going from a calm sea into a huge storm.
Yeah.
And it's getting rocked around all over the place. So probably taking that extra damage as well just hasn't helped whatsoever.
Well, no, and so because they warp through, and or they enter the warp, and I suppose for those that, I mean, this is the first time I think we're properly introduced to a Gellerfield, or the understanding of what a Gellerfield is.
I think right at the beginning it's mentioned, but it isn't in too much depth.
Yeah.
So, but this is definitely where we get our understanding of. It's basically your force field to keep ghosts out, isn't it? Or keep the demons out.
So jumping into the warp, you effectively, your ship tears a rift in real space, and you enter the ethereal plane of the warp, and obviously all of the predators that, or as they're described as predators, but they're the psychic beings that inhabit the warp, the unreality. And the Gellerfield is effectively like a blanket of real space that surrounds your ship or your vessel, and obviously, it takes a lot for warp spawn to translate into real space. Yeah. So as long as you're moving quickly and you've got your Gellerfield, you should be okay.
Yeah, but I'd say obviously because they've taken that damage from Typhon, that's probably affected them, because they're literally not in the warp for long, maybe just long enough to get standing back up. And Haker from down somewhere else on the ship says that there's an intruder on board.
Yeah.
So Garrow and a couple of the men, they make their way down to where he is, and they find there are basically these decaying ghostly apparitions coming out and taking solid form.
Yeah.
And they're like disgusting, mutated.
The Gellerfield has failed.
Yeah.
There's what they don't know at this point is the first mention we ever have of plague marines.
No.
But that's what they are.
Yeah. Well, at the minute, I think these ones, because that comes up at the minute, these are just the ghosts coming out, the ghosts appearing and taking solid form. And I think these, like you said, they probably would be the plague marines, because they're big, disease-ridden creatures. But they managed to kill this first wave, the warm-up wave. They managed to take them out, and obviously they're all shocked by what they see, and can't explain it. And one of the ship's crew who was there is going mad with fear, and because she's just seen something, because obviously they say to look into the warp can drive you insane. So she throws herself onto Garrow's sword, because to kill herself is better than to stay there and see that again, or have that going through her mind.
Yeah.
And then Garrow, as a result of that, he goes into a bit of a shock temporarily, and has I think it's like an out of body experience and another vision, and where before he was seeing all the symbols of the Death Guard turning corrupt, and he's looking at Haker, and he sees basically him turn from the Death Guard into a plague marine in his head, and sees like the disease taken over him, but he snaps out of it because another alarm goes off back down towards the gun bay where they had their fight earlier with Grulgar's men. And they charge down there, and this is probably the bit that stops them in their tracks, because this is where they really do see plague marines, because they see the reanimated corpses of Grulgar and his men. And obviously Grulgar was in his Terminator armor previously, so he's even hulking above these plague marines. And then so then they go into a showdown normally where they would probably put a few bolt rounds through them and take them down. These guys are just crawling towards them, and they get into a proper fight. And then we have a little poxwalker crawl his way up and say, "Master," and realise that this is Caleb. So Garrow puts him out of his misery for the second time.
That bit's a real punch, because you realise that the as I said, the ruinous powers, and in this case it's Nurgle that's reached out. Maybe because of, as I said, his love of the Death Guard, but Nurgle's reached out and like reanimated these the corpses of the old Marines and anyone that was dead, and that includes poor old Caleb, who at this point is no longer Caleb. He is, as you said, a poxwalker, one of the pox boys, and obviously all of the plague marines that are with them. And while this is happening, I can't remember what, because they obviously charge down and deal with this, but obviously all of the plague marines now, their weaponry is obviously corrupted by chaos, including their knives.
Because again, Decius, being the young upstart and wading in head first, goes and he gets himself separated.
Poor Decius.
So I know where you're going now.
So he obviously gets injured by the one of the plague knives, or what becomes known as plague knife tabletop. But it's effectively a poisoned wound, and despite his Astartes physiology, it's like it's bad news, right? It's a real corrupting wound, and he has to spend a lot of time under the care of the apothecary for the rest of this, and like almost stasis for the rest of the journey, pretty much. This takes him out now, because he can feel the corruption coming up, because this knife is so powerful, it went through his power fist and infected him, and he can feel it going up. So he chops his own arm off, and then he passes out, and it's Grulgar is about to land a killing blow on Decius, because obviously he knows this is Garrow's number one sort of student, and Garrow gets in the way, and they face off. And Garrow they're fighting a losing battle, because Garrow, he with his sword, he cuts it straight across Grulgar's stomach, and his guts come out, and Grulgar's like holding him in his hands, just laughing
and putting them back, and he can just see like more of these apparitions coming out, and knows that they're about to be outnumbered, and he knows the only way to do this is to get out the warp, and he just gives the command back up onto the bridge to drop out of the warp immediately, because it's their only choice, which they do, and as that happens, you sort of get a bit of a no moment from Grulgar, as you see his soul is ripped out of his body, and Garrow describes it as his soul, and all of the Death Guard that were possessed, their bodies collapse, but the souls that were inside them, or the demons, are pulled out and sucked back into the warp. So I don't know if that demon was, I don't know if it was a demon in Grulgar's body using Grulgar's, I don't know, memory, or if Grulgar was still in that body and then turned into a demon from inside. I don't know quite how it works, because obviously when they were fighting, he was talking and fighting as Grulgar.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to know if it's just a demon, or potentially would we see Grulgar come back as a death plague marine elsewhere.
So yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but it is one of those weird ones, isn't it? It does seem like is it Nurgle or some demon playing with Garrow, like and talking to him as if he's Grolgor.
Yeah.
But the way that Grolgor speaks, the way he discusses it, it feels like it is Grolgor, like, and his consciousness saying like, this is the power we can have. This is what, you know, I've now embraced the power and I've taken that step.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, obviously, at this point, that step for him is only available in the warp. So
Yeah.
as soon as they translate out, as dangerous as that is, obviously all of the warp spawn suddenly can't hold on to their tethers. They're not yet strong enough to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting to sort of how it works. Do you give over to chaos and then you're given that immortality? It's probably that he's already assigned himself to chaos, so
Yeah.
there probably was some sort of you'll come back as this, that, or the other.
It's one of those, like, it's interesting with Grolgor in particular, because the you know, we assume, and I'm pretty sure it's confirmed, that he's dead, right?
Yeah.
Earlier, he's already dead.
Yeah, he was dead. Proper.
So
The virus bomb got him.
Exactly. Solon Decius, spoiler alert for the end of the book, is more of an interesting one, because he is, at this point, he's poisoned by a corrupted weapon.
Yeah.
And is in like you know, he's in trouble. He's poisoned by a corrupted weapon. And Garrow is like racked with guilt, because he's like, oh no, like I've dragged him on this mission, I've dragged him here. He's now battered. He's going through something I can't even describe. And he's effectively, you know, put into stasis by Voyen to keep him alive for the rest of the journey. And Voyen, you know, I suppose, long story short, we keep tracks of him as it's going, and Voyen's like, he's not sure whether he's going to make it. Like, he keeps deteriorating. What is it? Is it like a couple of times they talk about giving him the Emperor's Peace?
Yeah.
Because it's the only fair thing to do, and that's what Voyen's saying. And Garrow's like, no, he can fight this. He can get through it.
Strong.
Yeah, and you feel the give and take, the pull of which way they should go. Anyway, in the meantime, they've translated out the warp.
Yep.
They're effectively drifting, lost to a degree.
Yep.
They can't risk jumping back into the warp because of what's just happened.
Yeah.
Also, in the back of Garrow's head, he's like, he's a loyalist as far as he's concerned. He's a loyalist to Astarte, fleeing the Death Guard Legion as well as the other legions, which no one knows a traitor yet.
No.
In a stolen
ship.
He
needs to survive. Yeah.
And in the stolen ship, effectively, he's also got like remembrances who are praying to the Emperor as a god, which is also a big no-no. So he's like, yes, he's running into Imperial space, and he's trying to run back to warn everyone, but at the same time, he's like, how am I going to explain what's happened here? Like, so there's all of this is bearing, you know, in his mind, and he's got to work out, how is he actually going to get found? How is he actually going to find? How is he going to get himself back to Terra to actually warn the Emperor and warn the other warn the other legions, warn the other Primarchs, and I can't quite remember how they come up with it.
So they basically, like you say, he's having a chat with Cruz, and they work out how many of them are left, and they work out they've only got enough supplies to last them 5 months. And
Yeah.
then I think one of them even says, well, what if we do a cull of the crew?
That's it.
So
Yeah.
well, we're not doing that. That'll only give us an extra 2 months. It's not worth killing people just to survive 2 months. And Garrow goes, or Cinderman is down below decks, and he's sort of playing receptionist as crew members are coming through because they want to meet the saint and pray with her. And then Garrow arrives and sort of demands to talk to her, and they have a real good heart to heart because he's angry, obviously, that this religion's seeped in, but then she's talks him down, and he said, well, I've been told I'm on purpose, but I don't understand. And she said, well, you saved us. That is your purpose, just to save us. And they have a bit of a heart to heart. And then he just comes up onto the deck and he says, we're gonna get attention. We're gonna drop the warp drive. We're gonna charge the warp drives. We're gonna drop them off, and we're gonna blow them up and create a signal.
That's it. It's going to be like a warp flare. So it will cut through the roiling disturbance that's in the warp that's blocking, all Imperial ships at this point.
Yeah.
And it's like, because half of them are like, well, if we do that, then, and no one hears it, we're boned. Like, there is no way we are out of this, because effectively you're blowing up our warp drives. And obviously he's like, well, we're not going back into the warp after Grolgor.
We won't survive that. Yeah.
Yeah, the Nurgle boys. So
here we go.
They do it, and it's interesting.
Before they do it, Voyen, who's really anti this, pulls his bolter out and points it at Garrow's face.
Oh yeah.
And he's saying, "You're not making this choice for me. Like, you made all these other choices. You're the reason we're here. Now you want us to do something that, either way, it's suicide." And Garrow just says, "Well, we have faith in the Emperor," and then gives the order for them to do it. And we find out clearly, Voyen didn't pull the trigger.
No,
because the warp drives are released, and the flare goes off, and as you say, the explosion's so huge and bright that it clears the storm.
Yeah, but what it does is it creates that moment within the storm, doesn't it? That one of the astropaths on what is it? It's not Sigismund's. Is it? It's on the Phalanx, isn't it?
It's on the Phalanx, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the that you cut. It's cut in earlier of this astropath, like, who can't see anything. It's a black void. There's no way of finding your way around. They don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Like, that you're seeing it from an astropath point of view.
It's like a lighthouse, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Suddenly there's this ding, and they're like, okay, let's go and follow it.
Yeah. And then still on board the Eisenstein, like, everything's shutting down. Power's going. It's getting really cold. We find out that Garrow didn't punish Voyen. They're just keeping separate for now.
Yeah.
And Cruz tells him that now even Astartes have begun attending sermons, and this religion is just spreading. Garrow goes and visits Dacius, who wakes up briefly and asks, "Why have you saved me?
Yeah.
This is cruel. I don't want to live in a future where we have to fight against our brothers. If Grulgar and his men are an example of what's to come, I'm not interested."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, and Garrow says, the Emperor will save us." And Decius says, "We are forsaken," and passes out again.
Yeah.
And then Sendek comes and says that there's an unknown fleet en route to intercept us. We've been found, but we don't know who it is. And obviously the last worry was that Typhon was chasing them.
Yeah.
And then obviously they don't know who could have followed them into the warp. So they all the survivors are brought to the bridge or into internal areas. and they're ready to attack any intruders. And as they're sat there waiting, the doors slowly are burnt down and burst open, and 8 Astartes in gold armor step in, and Garrow demands they identify themselves. And the Primarch of the Imperial Fist, Rogel Dawn, steps through and asks for permission to board.
Yeah.
And if they can lend any assistance. And that takes us into part 3, Unbroken.
Hi guys, thanks for listening. Make sure you check out part 3, Unbroken. If you are enjoying this series and want to help us out, please like this video, share with your friends, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. We do want to know what you think, so feel free to leave a comment below, or you can find us on all social media at Iron and Ceramite. Take care and see you soon.